This time last year, the state was recovering from one of the worst natural disasters it had ever seen. A historic flood that resulted in 19 deaths and thousands upon thousands of farmland being destroyed. Well, recently, I sat down with South Carolina Farm Bureau President Harry Ott to get his take on the flood and where the state's ag industry stands a year later. 2015, arguably one of the worst years ever for South Carolina farmers. First you had the freeze in March, summertime comes, you experience a drought, then in October, 11 trillion gallons of water dumped in this area and dumped on the state. How does one deal with the magnitude of something like that?
Well, you know, I wish I could tell you it was easy, but it was a situation that I don't think any of us were prepared for. I don't think as an individual farmer I was prepared for the flood. I'm not sure Farm Bureau could have anticipated all of the ramifications that a flood of that magnitude caused. The good thing is, however, Farm Bureau was there, and farmers knew that Farm Bureau was going to be there for them, and we were going to be advocating on their behalf to try to help them recover from what we call around here the 1,000-year flood.
Which brings me to my next question. When it was all said and done, I think it was $587 million in losses. What did Farm Bureau do, President Ott, to help these farmers?
Well, you know, I wish I could tell you we were successful on every front, but we were successful in some. Number one, we reached out, made sure that everybody was okay. To our members, and then we went to work on trying to figure out, number one, how much money did we lose, because when you go to government, whether it be state government or the federal government or local government, first thing they want to know are numbers. So we put the best numbers we could. We worked with the South Carolina Department of Agriculture, Hugh Weathers. We worked with Clemson University, the Extension Service. We surveyed our farmers, and we got them to tell us exactly what we lost, what crops were most significantly impacted, where was the most damage. And once we assessed how much we had actually lost, obviously how much was covered by crop insurance. So we took that into account. Unfortunately, we found out about 1/3 of the actual losses were covered by insurance. It's a well-documented fact that we ran into a little bit of a problem with our governor, because most people aren't aware that there are no disaster relief funds in the Farm Bill anymore. So all this money had to be asked for and appropriated and sent to the governor for her distribution, and she decided that agriculture wasn't going to be one of the things that she spent her money on that came from Washington. So we were disappointed, but at the same time we went to our state General Assembly and we lobbied them to see if they could find some state funds to help agriculture. And Chairman of Ways and Means, Brian White, introduced a bill, $40 million that went directly as grants to state farmers. We were very successful, overwhelming support in the House and the Senate. Again, we had to fight off a gubernatorial veto, but we overrode the veto, and we didn't want the bill to be so that anybody made money on the relief bill. So they put a 40% threshold in, so you had to show that you lost 40% of your anticipated income to qualify. And then if you did qualify, you could get up to $100,000. So of the $40 million, I think we distributed between $35 and $36 million directly to South Carolina farmers to help them get over that 1,000-year flood.
You're coming up on your year in office, I guess, so to speak. What are some of the goals that you have in mind, as president of South Carolina Farm Bureau?
Well, what we want to do is expand our tent. We want to make sure that every farmer, every person that is actively engaged in agriculture on whatever level and whatever size knows that South Carolina Farm Bureau is their voice, and we want to give them a voice. There's a big movement, whether you call it urban agriculture whether you call it specialty crops, whether you call it organic, whether you call it diversified. There are a lot of things going on in agriculture that, to me, as a traditional row crop farmer that's been farming 40 years, these are new ideas. So what we want to do in South Carolina is to reach out to all of these people. We want to embrace organic, we want to embrace specialty crops, and then we want them in turn to embrace traditional agriculture. And we think Farm Bureau is the perfect tent, perfect organization to bring all of these people together, because we know going forward, when you only represent 1 to 1.5% of the population, you need to be growing your membership and reaching out to these emerging markets, and that's what we hope to do in South Carolina.